And on this note, I want to get reaction from Mr. Gaga, who is in the studio with us. I mean, Mr. Karbo has made a number of accusations or allegations against you as well. One of them being that the NDC decided, I mean, you had issues, and also the NDC decided to take the law into your own hands. You just heard him there accusing you as well of accosting the NPP agents, particularly in Okaikwe Central, and subjecting them to abuse. How do you respond to all of these?
Beatrice, first of all, it is not true that NDC activists assaulted EC officials and MPP party agents. That is far from the truth. I would want to ask my brother, is he aware of complaints lodged by the people allegedly assaulted by the NDC? I mean, the victims should first and foremost take the step of lodging complaints before the police. In any case, the polling stations and collation centers were protected by the police and other allied security agencies. In addition to that, the military was also deployed to ensure that there was security and peace at the various collation centers and polling stations. So I want to say emphatically that NDC activists did not assault anybody. Additionally, Sami Jemfi did not direct party activists of the NDC to storm polling stations or collation centers and cause mayhem. What he did was to direct our party agents to proceed to the various collation centers and ensure that the ballots that had been cast were counted.
You do not think that
Sami Jemfi never directed anybody to proceed to any polling center and cause mayhem or commit acts of violence.
I remember him at that press conference.
Yes, he never directed anybody to go to any polling station.
For the sake of vigilance.
Yes,
you
absolutely.
You do not think that they might have heard it in a different way?
No, that is not true. That is why I am saying that any allegation of assault ought to form the basis of a complaint before the police. Period. If they haven't done that, and then they must go to sleep. Who was assaulted? I hear them say EC officials were assaulted, they took to their heels, and their agents were assaulted, and pink sheets confiscated from them and burnt.
But we saw that.
Those are lies.
We don't know which people were behind that.
Exactly.
But we saw EC officials attacked.
Who attacked them? Is it the case that it is the MPP itself? When they realized they were losing the elections, they then decided that, look, they will cause, chaotic scenes, right? Induce chaos in order to disrupt the process. Look, Beatrice, the EC itself, some officials of the EC engaged in unlawful conduct. The law is very clear. You have the CI 127. After the close of polls, what do? The ballots are counted, right? When the ballots are counted, you transmit the ballot boxes and the pink sheets to a collation center where the collation is done, right? Even before then, the declaration is done at the polling station. The various polling stations, those declarations were done. And when the collation progressed, after the transmission of the pink sheets to the collation centers, further declarations were done. And now, if the MPP, had any challenges, I think the proper procedure would have been for them to proceed to court to ask for appropriate reliefs. But you see, the EC took it upon themselves to proceed to do recollation, which is against the law. So it is the conduct of the EC itself which created chaos, right, at the recollation centers. Because recollation a terminology that is not even known to CI 127.
And I would get the response of Anthony Karbo very shortly. But Mr. Gaga, you do not think that the NDC must also accept responsibility for the kind of chaos we saw in the collation centers? Because we covered the event as well, and I'm sure you know that we did 24/7, where we saw NDC supporters camping at the regional office of the Electoral Commission in Accra, even at Tesano, where they insisted that until the EC had declared their parliamentary candidates as the winners, they were not moving.
But of course, after collation, what do you expect, Beatrice?
But it was, if I could land, it was the reason, for instance, Okakwe Central, Tema Central, Ablekuma North, and another area, even Domko Abenya, were declared, and now we've had the EC saying that the declarations didn't follow the right procedures, and they are going to redo them.
What is the procedure? After the collation, the next step is for the declarations to be done. Question is, did they not declare? Did EC officials not declare?
They felt they were under duress.
They declared under duress. In the eye of the public, somebody could, be compelled to make a declaration under duress. Was it at gunpoint? The media covered all these events. Did you see somebody draw a gun and point at somebody's head and order the person to declare?
The EC officials,
did you report any such incident?
Crying because of the crowd and how...
Of course. People were simply being vigilant. They didn't want a repetition of what happened in Techim and Saf in 2020. So they masked up and asked that the declarations be done.
So you don't see anything wrong with what they did at the collation centers?
The people went there, in the full glare of the security, the police were there. In some cases, the military was there, and they protected the EC officials to make the declarations because the ballots had been counted, right? So what is the beef here? If anybody had a challenge after the declaration, the only alternative left for the person was to proceed to court. We find that the EC took it upon themselves, maybe under the coercion of the MPP, to recollate in a manner that is illegal.
Mr. Karbo will have the opportunity.
Do you now see why there is a court action, which was accompanied by an injunction, an application for an injunction to halt the illegality that the EC engaged in?
Fortunately, you are actually a ranking member of the Interior and Defense Committee of Parliament. In certain places, we saw supporters of political parties setting ablaze office of the Electoral Commission. Some of them we saw even the ballot papers all spread across, destroyed and all of that. You don't see anything?
What I know is that there were attempts to swap ballot boxes. People stuffed ballot boxes with ballot papers in readiness to swap them with what had lawfully been sealed after the voting came to a close. And unfortunately for those who wanted to engage in such conduct, they were accosted. Some of the ballot papers were simply thrown away and burnt. But that was an act permissible in law, because those who engaged in the unlawful act of stuffing ballot boxes in readiness to have them swapped were caught in the process. So they were the ones whose ballot boxes were taken away from them and destroyed.
Even the ones we saw, like there was chaos in broad daylight. People
did you not cover incidents where people attempted, right, to introduce foreign ballot boxes to collation centers?
We saw that. I want to come to you.
You saw that, and you covered it as well.
I want to come to you, Mr. Karbo.
So, Beatrice, who are the people who were behind those attempts?
But how do you accuse the MPP of being behind?
Well, so it is the duty of the media to try and unravel the circumstances surrounding those attempts, those unlawful attempts. So some people, some individuals took it upon themselves to prevent the commission of certain crimes associated with the electioneering process.
Mr. Karbo, I mean, you just confirmed that indeed you were in Okakwe Central, Ablekuma North, and a few other places during the election. How do you respond to this? Mr. Ogaga is accusing the MPP of inducing violence or these chaotic scenes in these constituencies just so you could win the election in those areas. How do you respond to that? And also the bit about the Electoral Commission. I know you rated the EC very high in your preliminary comment, but even that bit about the EC also being complicit in this, I'm sure you remember that story about the EC, the pink sheets the people had and what the EC had being different because the signatures were different. How do you respond to all of these? Hello, Mr. Karbo. I don't know whether you have muted yourself. If you can unmute yourself so we can hear you. Anthony Karbo.
Hello?
Yes, excellent. Please go ahead.
Yes. I said that you gave my cousin quite a time to speak.
Yeah, so you have time to respond. Please go ahead.
You need to, yes. You know, I'm sure you are surprised. I'm sure you are even surprised about the narration he's giving when you are pointing to him about video recordings that you have aired on your platform where Electoral Commission buildings were being burnt down. He didn't respond to any of that. He only created another question and provided answers to that and started talking about ballot staffing. He's a member of the Defense and Interior Committee. The acts that we saw by hoodlums of their party going around setting ablaze public facilities is completely condemnable. He hasn't even condemned these acts, whether they are MPP or NDC. He hasn't provided any condemnation whatsoever. Whatsoever. Wait.
If take exception. He says NDC hoodlums set EC offices ablaze. That is a serious, statement to make.
If Mr. Karbo can finish with his thoughts, and then when I come back to you.
But even before he lands, Beatrice, I need to place it on record that NDC, who has been arrested by the police
Mr. Gaga,
and identified as NDC hoodlums?
We know that the police has made some arrests. Mr. Gaga, if you kindly let Mr. Karbo land.
People were shot. Eight people died in 2020. Not a single soul has been prosecuted.
But this year we know that the police has arrested some people involved in violence.
Yes, and President Mahama has assured the nation that he will not behave like Akufo-Addo. He would ensure that all the killings associated with the elections would be investigated thoroughly.
Please, Mr. Karbo, if you can conclude with your thought.
Beatrice, how do I conclude when I never started?
So please, okay, continue. Please, go ahead. Yes, go ahead with your submission.
I never really started.
Yes, go ahead with your submission.
To you that
yes.
He's telling you a story, and I'm saying that as a member of the Defense and Interior Committee, an election violence steps up, and he fails to provide any condemnation, whether MPP or NDC, anybody who's out there destroying public property. That condemnation should come from him and all of us. And I'm saying to him as well that the scenario you created for him to respond, he failed to respond to that. He created his own questions and started providing answers. Indeed, he's telling you, the media, to unravel the story. What is the essence of our security agencies? He says that the MPP people have not lodged any complaint. Meanwhile, complaints have been lodged. The people involved have been reported to the police. This is on record. So when we are providing information to the public, let's be quite fair and balanced with our reportage. I have said that the election went on very well. Until the MPP presidential candidate conceded defeat, there was no chaos anywhere in the country.
So there's a bit you haven't answered. There's a bit before you there's a bit you haven't answered, which is the question about.
I won't, the way you go about your interviews, I won't be able to deal with all these matters because I've been writing every little thing he says. I need time to respond.
Go ahead.
But if you don't provide the time, and every time conclude your thoughts.
Okay, so please go ahead. Please go ahead with your thoughts.
Okay. How do I conclude when I haven't started? So I'm saying to you that he cannot say that those young men who stormed those offices could have been induced by the NPP, who had conceded defeat of the elections, presidential elections, long before. It couldn't have been possible. If they were actually winning those particular seats, what was the essence of the chaos? If you knew very well that you had won those seats, what was the essence of the duress insisting that people must be particularly declared in a particular election? I've given you the example of Ablikuma North. I gave you the example of Ekwanke Central. I've told you what happened in Tema Central. Go to Obuasi East and find out what happened in Obuasi East. This is public record. These matters are out there. Everybody is watching it with dismay, complete dismay, that this is the situation we find ourselves in. So the NPP couldn't have induced this violence, induced this chaos when its presidential candidate had conceded. And all this chaos started right from the time when the presidential candidate had conceded and said that the NDC had won, went ahead to congratulate President Mahama. So what was the essence of all the chaos? If you knew you had secured these seats, if you knew you had won these seats, what was the essence of the vandalism? What was the essence of the rowdiness that took place in the country? It was pretty embarrassing. Because you had won the seats. If you had won the seats, then there was no need for confusion.
But you heard the NDC saying that they were protecting property, state property from being
Everybody, when did they say that one? It has never been part of the conversation. You just asked him about bent public facilities. That's what you asked him. You didn't ask him about any other thing apart from that.
No, I'm just responding to the statement you made. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, but no, he should respond, not you. I mean, he should respond. Because those are the matters that we have put before the table and those are the conversations we are having. And I'm saying to him that these things have happened. These situations have happened. Today, as we speak, we are unsure about the declaration of particular MPs. And I'm sure that as a majority, they are also completely unsure about what is going on. So is it not possible for the two political parties and the Electoral Commission to sit down and sort out these results based on what the Electoral Commission's original documents are? That should be the basic record, should declare these results. And that is what the MPP has been asking for since this afternoon. That look, the Electoral Commission should look at it again. Because what has happened is a complete mockery of the electoral system. How do you declare results based on 2/3 polling stations that you have received? How do you do that? How do you arrive at that conclusion? Don't forget that these elections must be gazetted. So until these matters are resolved, we cannot even gazette the final results.
You're done with your
this business about the MPP induced. I mean, the man is already down. What is he inducing for?
So you're dismissing the suggestion that you're dismissing the suggestion that this violence or chaotic scenes we've seen, perhaps the people behind them are NPP people. That's what you're denying.
I'm completely saying that the MPP had no business in this violence when its presidential candidate had conceded the election. So what would be the violence for? The concession of the presidential candidate saved the situation. So there shouldn't have been any need for all the violence that we have seen. It was a fait accompli. It was done. So what was the point? Why do we have to destroy public property? When you've won an election, and the flag bearer talked about it, a very decisive election that had been won by the President Mahama, what was the essence of the destruction? What was the essence of the violence? And I'm saying that all these were as a result of Sami JP's press conference, where he told his party people to storm the coalition centers. At the coalition center, they were not going to count ballots at that point because the ballot declarations and counting had taken place at the polling station.
But
so
the
essentially, what was going to happen at the coalition centers was essentially for the parties and their agents to sit with the Electoral Commission, a mano, and present their pin sheets. And if they confirm or conform with what the Electoral Commission signed off for both party agents, and that is what will be tabulated and declared. That is the process. That is how it is done. So even before you get to the coalition center, you always know whether you've won or lost. Agalga knows that when his elections are done, before he gets to coalition center, if he is cruising with victory, he knows. So nobody goes to the coalition center knowing that you have lost an election. If you know you've lost an election, before you get to the coalition center, you would know. Because your own pink sheet coalition should tell you where you stand.
And on that point, I just want to read a bit of the CI 127, which was the CI we used for this year's general election. I know it was the same used for the 2020 as well. Just a bit of it. It says, after votes are cast and counted at the polling stations, the presiding officer submits the pink sheets, statement of poll and declaration of result form to the constituency collation center. At the collation center, the returning officer aggregates all polling station results. There was a point Mr. Karbo was making earlier about certain constituencies where not all polling station results were there, and yet we had declarations. I think one of them is Okaikwe, where you had about 70% and about 30% were not available, and yet they went ahead to declare it. Also, at the collation center, the returning officer aggregate all polling stations, which is I just talked about. The returning officer ensures the figures from all polling stations are correctly tallied. I want to jump a bit of it, and it says, declaring the candidate with the highest number of valid votes as the member of parliament elect, issuance of election certificates, that's regulation 43.8. And I'm sure you know all of these because you're a lawyer. And after the declaration, the returning officer issues an election certificate from 1EL to the winning candidate confirming their victory. So we've got all these processes set in place. What's the problem? Why are we here?
So, Beatrice, first of all, let me remark that my cousin is confusing two issues here. The concession made by the MPP flag bearer was in respect of the presidential elections. Outcome. There were a few polling stations which were outstanding, but you see, if you were to aggregate the remainder of the polling station results, right, and added everything onto the votes of the MPP flag bearer, he was still not going to win.
Well, that was even a point Jimensa made when she declared the final results.
Absolutely. So that is the principle. Right. So the concession was
But that was for presidential.
Absolutely.
The parliamentary just made it clear that you need all the polling stations.
Absolutely. So point is, the MPP parliamentary candidates, right, were unsure whether they had won or lost. In most cases, they had lost. And declarations made. You just read relevant provisions of the CI 127. If the contention here is that Ablekumanov or is it central, all the results of all the polling stations were not aggregated prior to the declaration, what do? Do you go back to the EC, which was the same body which made the declaration, to reverse its own declaration? It is not for nothing. It is not for nothing.
Beatrice. Yes.
Beatrice, can I land? Can I land? It is not for nothing. It is not for nothing that
okay, so land briefly, Mr. Karbo.
No, I think I should conclude. That is not fair. If you do that, Beatrice...
No. But you know that you also
No. Can I land? Let me land.
Mr. Karbo, I'll come to you very shortly, briefly.
So my point is, you can make all the allegations, such as all polling stations not having been aggregated prior to the declaration. That is an allegation. Now, whose duty is it to make declarations that what the EC did not conform to the CI 127? It is the duty of a court of competent jurisdiction.
Mr. Karbo, you had the opportunity to respond, and then we're running out of time. Okay, so
the process I have faulted here is that for the MPP to have induced the EC to agree to recollate is an act which is unlawful.
Okay, so I'm coming to you, Mr. Karbo.
The matter is as simple as that.
Mr. Karbo, please come in to respond.
He made a point about what the MPP flag bearer sought to do with his concession speech. And I just want to read exactly what he said so that we are clear that he didn't talk about conceding only in the presidential election, but he added the parliamentary election as well.
But if that is anything to go by...
Can he land? Because we are running out of time.
Why are they still contesting some parliamentary election outcomes?
Please let him land. I'll give you the opportunity to give your final word because you are running out of time.
Yes.
Please go ahead, Mr. Karbo.
He said that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has won the presidential election decisively. The NDC has also won the parliamentary elections, even though we await the final coalition of the number of seats. This is exactly what Bawumia said. And I said, by the time Bawumia made this comment, the MPP knew that there was a parliamentary majority in favor of the NDC. What we didn't know, it is by what number. And so the NDC had no business at the coalition centers or charging their supporters to go to the coalition centers, because in a matter of a short time, we would have known the final figure. And that was all we were waiting for. So we were completely at a shock that they reacted the way they reacted, stormed most of the electoral commission coalition centers, and created this mayhem. Look at what happened in Akwatia. Look at what happened in Akwatia.
Ms. Agaga, I'll come to you.
Look at what happened in Akwatia. Look at what happened in Fantiakwa. Look, and all these places have eventually been declared in favor of the MPP.
Ms. Karbo,
you read this where it talks about
Ms. Karbo, if you can be wrapping up for us, please.
I am wrapping up. I said that you talked about the CI, where you mentioned the fact that the presiding officer must aggregate all the polling stations in order to arrive at a declaration. Now, in aggregating all those polling stations to arrive at a declaration, he must have the agents of all the parties also seated with their pink sheets so that they can aggregate and see that the numbers tally before a tally or tabulation is done, and a declaration eventually is done, and a certificate is issued.
Mr. Karbo, if you can, in like 30 seconds, just your concluding thoughts, and then I will wrap up the conversation. Just about 30 seconds, because I need to go now.
The NDC has won. The president has won decisively. They have a majority in parliament. I wish them the very best. And like we have said, the flag bearer has said, we're not going to be an intrusive opposition. They have the mandate of the people, and they must execute what they have promised as far as their social contract is concerned.
They must execute.
My last comment will be that I hope that President Mahama does not forget Agalga.
Okay, so Mr. Akaka, if you have just in 30 seconds, and really the way forward, because we heard Anthony Karbo saying that the way forward to dealing with this parliamentary issue is for the EC, NDC, MPP to meet, so we deal with it. I'm wondering what your suggestion is going forward in like 30 seconds.
I think that, look, recollation is not acceptable in law. If some MPP parliamentary candidates have grievances related to the declarations that the EC made, I think the appropriate forum to seek redress is the law courts. They should head to the law courts. Now, if the law courts make appropriate orders that they should be recollation, then that becomes an order of the court. Right. I think such a step would be acceptable to all the parties. But where you have the EC...
Can you wrap up in like 5
where
seconds?
you have the EC engaging in acts of recollation unknown to the CI 127, it's bound to create room for chaos.
All right, we'll have to end it here. Thank you very much, James Agaga.
I wish my brother well. Karbo, I haven't seen him in a while.
The president-elect must remember you, James Agaga.